Hi, everyone. In this presentation, I'd like to talk to you about the ARPANET project and the development of the web, which I think is a relevant and useful information management project for us to discuss and know about in this course. So let's go to it. The ARPANET was being developed in the late 60s and early 70s. It looked somewhat like this in 1971. And the ARPANET was a project by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency of the U.S. Department of Defense. It was the U.S. military developing the ARPANET and the DARPA project, along, of course, the scientists and engineers that actually implemented these projects. By 1971, there were several computers across the United States connected to the internet via what they developed was the TCP/IP protocol, the all protocol, that's what the P is, but just write it out here, protocol, transport control protocol, and internet protocol, which essentially enables computers to communicate with each other, which was a novel thing. Computers had been already in use for a number of years by the 1970s. And in the late 60s and early 70s, they developed the technologies associated with the internet via the ARPANET project. Now, this is 1971, is the same year that Janis Joplin released her album Pearl, which is actually not my favorite. I much prefer Cheap Thrills with the Big Brother and the Holding Company, but this might just be a related aside. After the internet was developed in the 1970s, quite a few years later, but not much longer, in the late 80s and early 90s, the web came around. And the web came around and really revolutionized the internet. Because before the web browser, for a computer to communicate with another computer in the internet, you had to kind of send a message. You have to send a signal to one, kind of like an email, and one particular organization. So let's say UCLA over here, if they wanted to open their documents for anybody from Rutgers to access, they had to use a little bit relatively complex program to send them a message, and then UCLA would have to accept the message and then send them the documents back. And that's what the internet enabled. It enabled this transfer of documents, text, images, digital files back and forth. But it wasn't particularly easy to just, if you are UCLA, to just openly provide your documents, or if you're Stanford, if you wanted to acquire documents from Carnegie and so on, to just go ahead and easily do that. And the web came around to address that. Pop quiz. Who developed the ARPANET project that became the internet? You can pause now and think for a little while and play again, and I will give you the answer. The answer is, of course, scientists working for the US Department of Defense. Now, this is not to say that the technologies associated with the internet were entirely developed by the US research and the Department of Defense. So the technology of packet switching, which is the technology of communications of binary digital data, packet switching, which is different than the traditional technology of circuit switching associated with the phone lines and the analog communication. And this was developed by British scientists, and also French scientists were working on similar technologies. But the internet as we know it did come from the US Department of Defense ARPANET project from the late 60s. And it didn't take long for the internet to become more and more widely adopted. So this is a map from 1988 of the backbone of the internet. Now, these are not all the individual computers connected to the internet, but the backbones. So they're kind of like the internet service providers. So to connect to one another, once again, this was still not open to anybody and everybody. This was now managed by the National Science Foundation of the United States, and organizations, some government organizations, environmental organizations, academic organizations, also other kind of private business networks were using the internet. Maybe, I think now the numbers were like 30,000 by this time, 30,000 people connected to the internet. And it was becoming widely adopted, but not totally and openly adopted. And it was really not with the revolution of the web that the internet exploded in adoption among the population. And it was almost entirely developed by this dude here, Tim Berners-Lee, and he published the Proposal Information Management in 1989, where he describes the development of a linked system for storing and accessing documents. Documents would have references to other documents in the network. So he developed this web technology that enables documents to be openly available to others and include hyperlinks that direct to other documents. So as we saw in some of the previous images, what was neat about the web is that it placed documents such as this list of items here on a server that anybody could use the web browser, put the address to the document that they're interested in, and then all of a sudden the document would just appear there. It enabled organizations such as UCLA to put all their documents and the research that they wanted to publicize for others to quickly and easily access by going to a web browser and type in the UCLA address. This did not exist prior. Moreover, the web contained these hypermedia, these hyperlinks that enabled connections from one document to another within the web environment. And this, as you can imagine, revolutionized the entire work of everyone in the world by enabling the easy access of documents openly via the web browser, the inclusion of these hyperlinks to other documents from one document itself, and then created the World Wide Web as we know it now. Many of you may know this history, and we'll touch more upon this later, but this is it for now for this one, and I see you next time.